this to transcribe it as well. This is going to be beautiful. Do I feel more international? No. I'm in California.
What are you doing in California?
Living on a golf course.
You're living on a golf course?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, family, you still here? Oh, okay, love you. You want to say hi to Jake? Living on a golf course? Why?
Because I'm addicted to golf now. Haven't you heard? It's the new hype thing.
That's very on brand.
No, man, I'm down here as a transition. So we're moving back east and to kind of expand this thing and set roots in Atlanta. And
I thought you were gonna do the Carolinas.
We were looking at, I mean, it's the whole region, man. The Carolinas feed Atlanta. That's the big hub city around there. And then I love Raleigh and like the Triangle. And we did Charlotte, which is a cool town, but there's just so much more going on in Atlanta. And then been working on like expanding our network there. And like when we were in Charlotte, I was meeting with some great people and like they were all just like, yeah, the scene's great in Atlanta. And I'm like, okay, so I'll just move to Atlanta. I want to avoid this. And then it's a travel hub. It's, it's got a lot. And, I think it would be cool. We have some friends down there, but have you ever been?
I've only been to the airport.
It's a big airport.
It's a very big airport.
Yeah.
Very, very big airport.
I think it's the world's most active airport, actually.
Yeah. It was impressive in all of its eateries.
Yeah, no. There's actually like I remember from like a decade and a half ago having ribs in the airport and being like, these are great ribs. Like this place is solid. But I was, had that early 20s metabolism where I could eat ribs before a flight.
And then now you're like, that's not a good idea.
No, now I'm on like a 48-hour pre-travel diet of like oats and water just to make sure I travel correctly.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, how are you?
I'm good, man. I am very, very well. I'm in transition right now. And like as far as like health stuff has been good, been stretching, been, I read a book a week, so my brain is fine. But like
that B-boy lifestyle is catching up to you physically.
Oh, dude, I think it's the sitting, man. Like I've been thinking about getting a standing desk, but like my office space here isn't very conducive to it. But the sitting is like so damaging. It's so damaging. And so like I have to be very intentional about playing with the kids because that's also like cardio, like loosening my body. And so it's just been setting stuff like that up to be was like, yo, look, we're gonna play for an hour because I know y'all want to play and I gotta play too for my own health.
Dude, I was reading some article this morning, like headline, and then dove into it a little bit. But there have been reports coming out that cancer in people under 50 has risen like 80% in the last 3 years.
I believe it.
And there's like a number of reasons why, of course, right? That's just a very broad blanket statement. But one of the things, there were two things that they were talking about specifically as contributing to it. And one was diet, right? Just like a just crappy diet that most people have, but also the like sedentary lifestyle of just not being as active anymore. And it's like, makes sense. You eat like crap and you don't move. Your body's not going to feel good.
You're going to get cancer.
That
makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, like that, like health stuff is good. Spiritual health is good. Physical health is good. Mental health is good. Family's chill. Like Edith is almost 1. We got to figure out a birthday party for her in October. So she wins in my birthday month now because like obviously she's going to win out in my birthday month. BB's good. BB's good. I think she started homeschool. And that's been a trip. So that's been a trip because she has been able to choose her own curriculum. And the glaring thing that has been made, even in curriculum choice, like the glaring thing that has been made obvious is it is rare for people to prioritize the outcome in their product development over the output, right? So like people think input output, but they don't actually think outcome. And so like a lot of these books are not thinking, they're thinking, like rote memorization and like
Yeah.
tracing lines. And it's like, but that's not the outcome that you're actually looking for. So how does this output or input make any sort of sense? Right. And so that's been a really fascinating thing, because I think that a lot of America's problems hinge on early childhood education. And so like
Absolutely.
to hear this stuff like actually be played out, I was like, oh, like this is very, very interesting. And so she's cheating, which is really funny. So she's like buying curriculum that's required and then basically throwing it in the trash and like doing and going for the outcome her own route, which is so funny. It shortened the time horizon to the outcome. Like so all the crap you have to do to get input output from the standard curriculum takes time
Yeah.
that you don't actually need to take to get the outcome. Like
Yeah.
which she's been doing, like, so like math, she's like, oh, okay, cool, like I'm gonna do it like this and it works. And I'm like, oh, he's like doing math, like he's doing like basic math and he's already there. And it's not because he's necessarily some sort of genius, but because you just shortcutted the system and got to the outcome. I was like, oh, that's so American of you. Why is this not part of the American educational system that's being presented? So that's been fun.
It's
then,
interesting, man.
Yeah, like so so transition out of the nonprofit, I was supporting and then just back into start a plan, just trying to figure out kind of this next thing that I've been thinking about. Um and yeah, like I mean, it's chill. Like, I feel like people like us have never been able to be like in any sort of linear trajectory. Like it's non-linear and it's fine. But here's the thing that was really, here's the most interesting thing that I heard this week that was very sad and I think is also BS. I heard a friend say to me, he was like, look, like, I asked him this question. I was like, yo, like on the other side of your financial issues, like how much you need to be making to just be chill, right? You summited that peak. He's like 50 racks a month. I was like, all right, bet. And how much you making now? It's like 10. I was like, all right, cool. So like, but he said something right after that. He was like, yeah, I'm a generalist in like the largest, like if you were to talk about generalists, like I can do everything. And I hired this dude. He lives in Austin. I hired this dude to help me do some housekeeping stuff, right? Like upkeep on his like house. And this man could do everything. He was the most useful dude. And he was 50. And I looked at him and I was like, oh man, that's gonna be me in like 15 years if I don't like focus. And really like the backtrack to this was like I was never taught the game of money young, and I was never taught like that I was to like that being a generalist is not necessarily the best. Like and then he compared himself to his friend who's like, well, like my friend is worth $300 million, but I, he doesn't know how to change his oil. Like, and I'm like, I don't want to be the most this is the sentence, and it really just I was like, ugh. Like, I don't want to be the most useful loser in the room. And I was like, dang, dog, like that's intense. like number one, that's already fallacious thinking. You could focus. You could focus for one thing for an extent. You could focus because, like, he's like, he knows how to strip a car down to its like chassis, right? And like rebuild it. I'm like, yeah, but like if you were to have focused purely on that, you'd own an auto shop. And like you'd have maybe 4. I know a guy. I helped him. Like they own 4 auto shops and live like a middle class life. Like that's still not the 300 mil. Like the opportunity vehicle comes with like like your opportunity vehicles come with the shifting in your knowledge base. Like the broader your brain gets, the more it makes connections that make no sense to somebody that has focused their entire life on building cars, unless you wanted to go a traditional linear, like I'm going to become a automotive engineer, right? Like, but it was just such like, it was so, I was like, yo, like that external measurement of money, like, and that comparison trap is such a disaster, because like a lot of that stuff that either homeboy got to that thing was because the vehicle that he chose had that baked into it. Most like, I don't know what he did, but most likely it was like software, right? Well, it was like, if you're a computer engineer, scalability is baked into what you do. Like, that's why there's so many damn rich people that when you talk to them from Silicon Valley, you're like, you don't know very much about the world, do you? Like, you know what I mean? Where they're like hyper intelligent in relative to code, but then like, I don't know, I've talked to girls. Like, so yeah. Anyways, like that was like the big. I was like, oh snaps! Like that's not one dude. That's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are under that.
Oh,
press.
100%, man. Like it's funny. And I want to seed some of this later conversation with this for this quote unquote working session, first iteration of it. But in it brought up, you remember talking about me when I was even formulating the hypothesis when it was ampersand days.
Yeah.
And it was one of them was the basis of signals, perspective, and value. Right, the SPV. And it's like, everything we do is a signal we give out. Every receptor, every person has their own perspective, and then they attribute different value, right, based on their perspective to each signal.
Yeah.
And that pendulum swings with culture and values and everything. But what you're talking about, I see all the time. I would be lying if I didn't battle it myself, right? Which is, what is the benchmark you're comparing yourself to? And if homeboy thinks he needs to make 50 racks a month and he wants to be worth $300 million, it's like, what's up, bud? He's not just comparing himself to, like, he's comparing himself to a bar that takes a whole lot of luck to achieve, right? And that's when it becomes futile, right? Because he's not giving himself realistic bars to achieve. He's not giving him the steps in the journey.
Yeah, yeah, man. Like most of the, like, I know one billionaire, and he is the most boring billionaire. Like, he did retirement homes. Like, and you can't get more boring than old people. Like, his business and how he built his fortune was building really nice retirement homes for people, retirement communities. And like, he built it one brick at a time over the course of years. It's not sexy, like, it's hella boring, but he was smart about it. You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't, like what you said, like there's not a step one. There's just this far off destination. There's no understanding. Like, people that are well equipped to get to those ridiculously high milestones are not normally focused technicians of a trade, right? Like, they are usually the cogs in the machine. Even if they're well paid, they're usually the cogs in the machine. I think most of the time, most people that get there are arbiters of lots and lots of information. They're sitting, because like this dude was like, he was like, oh, he saw an opportunity in retirement homes, but really he had a construction background. And like, his construction background then became a real estate background. His construction background became a real estate portfolio, became a construction company. And like, all of those different things that he was like, and then it was old people. He saw an opportunity. We got to know that particular market really, really well. And I was like, yeah, like, of course, like, he is not a jack of one trade. This dude is like a multifaceted, like, person.
Yeah, but even to that, right? Like, he's the type of person, regardless, like, I'm breaking down somebody I don't know, but you have a skill and then you apply it and you expand and you see an opportunity and then you take advantage of that and you build on that and that and that, so on and so forth, right? There's so many other underlying factors of risk, right? Of taking the opportunity to do that, the luck factor of having the mechanisms at the right time, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's the problem with that I see with your friend, right? And the comparison and the setting the bar so much nowadays without just doing the, the common trope of blaming it on social media. But we're kind of influenced by the idea of reverse engineering success.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, look at how, the PayPal mafia got to it in the early 90s with Musk and Kraft and, so on and so forth. It's like, well, and then you try to reverse engineer that. Well, their thing's already done. They already did it. Right. And like, sure, there's lessons. We need to know our history. We need to learn from process. But the opportunity for putting the radio on the internet is done. Right. That is done, or whatever the hell it is. And so much nowadays, right, when we see the comparison, we see already played out narratives, and we compare ourselves. Well, why didn't I have it at that time? Why didn't I have this? It's like there's no more common thing than a great idea wasted, right? But the problem is most of the time it's not even a great idea. It's somebody else's idea that you reverse engineer and you make up the narrative of how it would have been great if.
Which is why I think that if there was anything in the space of personal growth that is undervalued and underappreciated without enough books written about it, is play for the sake of encouraging your imagination.
100%. Okay, so actually on this is the proverb that I love saying proverb, it sounds so formal, right? This is the cliche that I was thinking through this morning. The proverb: a good craftsman doesn't blame his tools. And I love this phrase. One, I was writing down and sorting my thoughts on it because I'll tell you my story behind this proverb, but before I ruin that with my own narrative and perspective, I want to get to know your reflection just in the immediate of a good craftsman doesn't blame his tools. What does that mean to you?
At the larger, so if you go way macro, my value is not in the external, right? Like the external is a tool. If I am to relate all of everything that I am capable of doing to a tool, like I am actually undervaluing the thing that I have intrinsically, which is a mind. Like, so if it is a tool, like that tool has been crafted by a mind, and that mind is made up of the same substance to different degrees than my own mind. Why would then I overvalue a tool relative to the thing that is actually of value, which is my mind, right? And so if I am to be a good craftsman, I am thinking about the principles of good craftsmanship and then seeking the tool that would provide to me the extrinsic value stuff, right? Like saved me time, like makes the thing better, or like lines things up better so I don't have to manually do it, so it's actually straight, right? Like I'm looking for the tools, but the only way that I can look for the tools and whether the tool passes or fails the test is if I am operating from a set of principles that originated from my mind. And so if I were to blame the tool, it would be blaming the wrong thing. Because really what is happening is if I don't have a way of measuring whether something is good or bad, I'm actually not a good craftsman. So I'm lying to myself, right? So then it's the tool's fault, not that I did not have a proper measurement for whether or not a tool is good or bad. And if I blame the tool, it was because of a decision that I made about purchasing the wrong tool. And that's very short in it's because usually when I hear that, I'm thinking, it's like a building fell over, right? Like, and you're like, it was the tool's fault. It's like, no, it wasn't. Like, you're not a good builder. Like, it's not the tool's fault. You're not a good builder. Like there's the place that I live, right? Like there is shoddy build here because there were mediocre builders that came in and built it. It's very, very clear, right? Doesn't matter what tools they use. The tools were probably the same as any, like, because you go to trade school and you're like, you come out, these are the tools you should buy, and you're like, I don't think at all, so I'm just gonna listen to you, right? Like, and you tell me what to do. And I think like that whole statement in summary is, if you blame the tool, you are a poor you are poor at what you do because the tool that is actually under leveraged is your mind.
Yeah.
But you're not thinking.
Yeah.
You don't know
That's
how
where,
to, okay.
yeah.
But
No,
if you
I
admit that
agree,
you don't
man.
know how to think, then you could at least learn how to think.
Yeah. No, totally. The way I interpreted it this morning on the macro level was that we overvalue, kind of to your earlier statement, right? Why I think it's very serendipitous is we oftentimes overvalue the destination rather than the journey, right? And so often, and I have like a personal relationship with this that I'll tell you, but to your larger macro point is, a craftsman, the point of the craftsman's task is to, let's just use the direct relationship, is to build a great cupboard. I don't know why cupboards come in, but a great cupboard, right? And they can have, the DeWalt drill and the best saw and the sharpest blade, etc. But once when they just set out without the plan, without the journey, without the experience of going into the build, but they have the best tool, the product still comes out shitty. Even
Yes.
if it had the sharpest things to do it, even if it had, the best varnish, it still
Yes.
will fall apart, right?
Yes.
But the journey of it, of first learning on, and doing it by hand, right? Hand sawing, chiseling things, creating all the things, glue, do it without nails, without power tools, right? Is
Yes.
you learn all of the little intricacies. You learn, I'm going into the woodworker metaphor a little heavy, but like, you learn grain, you learn how to place things, you learn tackiness, you learn how to design better, you learn minimalism, right? And you learn all of this in a process, in the journey to get there. And only then do you learn that what a tool is actually applied for and when you actually need something. Kitchen is another great one that I always go back to because I like cooking, which is one year in my stocking at Christmas, my family has stockings. It's very bucolic of like putting up on the hearth above the fireplace. And I got in my stocking a all-in-one avocado tool. It's my favorite. It's my favorite example of useless consumerism. Like, it's wonderful. I never took it out of its package, but I put it on a pedestal and I looked at it every day as what not to build. Right. But I couldn't also think about the amount of people that probably purchased this, because I was sitting there as somebody that was looking at a $15 all-in-one avocado tool. And it could like cut, but very mediocrely. It could deep hit. It could scrape out and spoon out, and it could mash an avocado. And all I could think of, I can do this all with a knife and a fork.
Uh-huh.
Right. And the same reason, right, of like a great knife is all you really need in the kitchen. Like that's the most powerful tool that you have. And all it is one thing, right? It's a sharp blade.
And it depends on who wields it.
Yeah, and it depends on who wields it, right? But you have to learn that. And that's why, schools like cooking schools, trade schools, and kitchens just teach you, keep your knife sharp and learn how to do all the little cuts with this one tool before you ever expand out to other things, right? You just learn this one tool.
It's I listened to a Mr. Beast interview.
Okay.
Right? And he was like, yeah, there's only two things. Get them to click, to make your thumbnail interesting, and then get them to finish the video.
Yeah.
That's it. There's only two things.
Yeah.
That's the
and
only
you can and you can do that a million ways, right? So on the good craftsman doesn't blame his tools, right? And even circling back on all this, what it always is like getting, like, valuing the journey and the iterative process of learning, right, down there. Because even to the Mr. Beast point, is like, make it an interesting thumbnail. Well, you can unpack that 1,000 ways. What is a thumbnail? What do you do? What's interesting to who? Right? All of that good stuff. But we overcomplicate it. And with the journey, and like, let's say your friend, right, getting back to wanting to be worth $300 million. And it's like, well, you're just talking about the destination. You haven't figured out the process and the skill that you're trying to create the sharpened knife for, right?
You can see, you also it is really difficult to see if you're focused on what is basically an arbitrary summit, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can't see how all of these stuff, all of the things that you've collected along the way intersect, and so you are actually blind to opportunity,
Yeah.
like, because everything intersects. Like
Yeah.
every skill, every idea from radically different spaces, there are ways to broker those ideas into new ideas. Because that's really what ideation is. It's just stealing a lot from a lot of different places simultaneously, and thinking about, like, it's like one of my favorite things to think about now, as I've been in this space, in the startup space for a while, is like all of the innovation that's happening in like HR.
Hmm.
Like the most boring, like,
Yeah.
nobody, like, HR, it's HR, like, but there is so much to crack there because everybody overlooks it, and it's stealing from every other place and bringing it into that place, that, like, where I'm like really fascinated by companies like Gusto, right? Where I was like, damn, you guys are really crushing it, and it's just innovation that existed in other places that you just stole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a natural. It's funny, man. We're like, so we're doing that exact same thing with ideas, right? Like that's how we're breaking it down now. Like we're even branding, our platform as an idea OS. But I was talking to a guy who, do you remember the Pi Accelerator?
Yes.
Rick, who runs it.
No, I don't, but I remember that logo.
Yeah. Rick's such a phenomenal human being, but he's I don't know whatever the startup terminologies are, unwinding it or whatever, but he's getting out of software and they're focusing on manufacturing. Now, for whatever that is, he's been fighting a good fight, and Portland's just not a good scene right now for pretty much anything, but the state's also putting money behind manufacturing, so they're going to concentrate there.
Oh,
Regardless, he and I were having a conversation not too long ago, and just catching up, and we were talking about our product, right? And we were looking at the innovation curve, right? The natural innovation curve of products. And one of the things he was noticing was that the technological innovation fundamentally goes, uh, put one broad tool out there that kind of does something, and then dissect it and do a bunch of best in breed innovation. And then at some point you get to peak best in breed, and then basically, um, take everything off the surface and put it into an all-in-one, and then go best in breed, and then you repeat that cycle.
yeah,
So
unbundle,
HR,
unbundle, bundle.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Gusto is a perfect example, right? Where okay, automatic payroll, budgeting, this, that, and the other, and now they're trying to put it all in one place. And it's, we use Gusto. It has some really wonderful advantages. It has some holes, but regardless, they're doing that. Now for us, right, we're doing that on ideation in general. Like, what does it take to even create, collaborate, and manage an idea? Right.
Mhm.
And there's like my big thing is there's so many point solutions that like are built for the great project manager, right?
Mhm.
But even to our point of a good craftsman doesn't blame his tools, right? It's there. The concept I was actually writing out earlier today was that there that we undervalue the power of battling not having the right tool, right?
Yeah.
Because a great project management tool with all the robust features does not make a project great,
No.
nor does it make a manager better at what they do,
No.
right? It doesn't. And it
No.
can be the most powerful thing. And this is my point. It's the avocado tool,
Yeah.
right? That's what Asana is to me. It's an avocado tool.
Sure.
Where it's like you have this one very specific task, and it can slice, it can dice, it can mix mash in the other, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, and then it sits on your shelf just like anything else, and all the things get underutilized, and you go back to the knife.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And what
is an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, and this is like fundamentally what we're doing is like on a market side, and I'm very interested in, we'll get you on the cohort and everything, but like on our side is like, I was looking at the statistics, looking at the broader economy. And we kept dealing with, investors and advisors and all these people being like, what's your beachhead? What's your ICP? What's your this, that, and the other? Right. And it was like, how do you get to specific project managers in business to business plays, because they see a direct line, because every other tool innovates that way and has been innovating that way. And then we were breaking it down, and there were all these wonderful statistics coming out that, like, one, the next generation has different needs because they're digital natives, right? Two, that knowledge work, there's 1 billion globally. It's the fastest growing sector of the workforce, right, as we conglomerate. But 1/3 of them are already 18 to 34-year-olds. And those 18 to 34-year-olds, this is different than the generation prior, use these types of basic tools every single day for their personal use, right? Be it notes, be it drawing out, be it planning, be it side hustles in the gig economy. And 96% of those, almost 100% of that next generation, don't like the options that they're using, because they're using all of these workforce tools. They're using all of these point solutions that were innovated to make an advanced project manager that much more advanced in a enterprise ecosystem to plan out their day, right? Or they're using very rudimentary tools that are kind of good, right, but haven't been developed out, haven't been sharpened in the way that a knife needs. So like a notes app, right? And then they're forced to patchwork all these things because they're digital natives. They're used to digital whiteboards. They're used to running a task. They're used to chatting with friends in a chat environment, not just sharing files and text.
Yeah.
But we haven't innovated that way. So for us, what we're really saying is like, okay, so an eighth of the world's population effectively uses these tools. And 1/3 of those people, right, use it every single day outside of work. And yet there's no tool being designed to just make that exchange easier. So let's focus on, how do we create this idea OS for your friend, for me, for whomever that uses these tools personally in every day when I'm just thinking, and let's centralize them and simplify them. Let's make the knife.
Yeah, it's like you're talking about the problem with context switching.
Yeah.
Right.
Siloing, context switching, and over complexity in general.
Yeah, and that it's what Zuckerberg is seeing too. Is like, he's like, if there could just be one place where we could access everything, it would be very valuable to people, because like, okay, so this is what I do, right? So my natural workflow now for ideation is I follow a planning model that's been adapted from like a 90s organizational framework. This dude named, what the hell is his name? It's an old framework. But what I do is, instead of so like, this is just an example of the problem that you're talking about. It's very annoying because most people don't think like this. And like, there's very few people that most people don't think like this. So it's just stuff that happens that Plex does. So for example, like, I'll be on Instagram and I'm like, that's really dope. Like, I really like the way that was cut, and I really like the way that was color corrected. The thing that Instagram wants you to do is save it. Or like, I'll be on Twitter and I'm like, oh, like, that's super useful. Like, it's great. That's like a great that's a great model for a newsletter. Amazing. Love that. Like, Twitter wants you to save it. But it's actually really annoying, because that graveyard of saves is very useless, right? Like, and so most people, ideally, it would be like a save, and then you could actually use it. But you have to develop and think about a system in which you actually access those things that you save on a regular basis so that they can be useful, right? And this is like the problem with the internet, right? And so, or the problem with just like social and like the way that everything is connected right now. And so what I do is, instead of saving the Instagram, I share it to my project management software, and I assign it context, right? And I throw it into an inbox in my PM software, and that inbox gets checked every 2 weeks. And then I process and clear the entire thing and properly tag it, label it, and move it around. So that's actually contextually useful. Right. And so like if I'm like, yo, like this is amazing, like it'll get sent to my video editor, and he is then responsible as a task for presenting, for replicating the process to see if it fits into our larger model, right? Like that kind of thing. That is very foreign behavior. That's like abnormal behavior for the internet. The internet is not, that is not being facilitated by any natural or native operator, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so it's funny, man. You mentioned one of our key things, which is contextualization.
Yeah,
right.
There's no context to the save.
Well, and that's one of the things that we are fundamentally building, right? Because so here was one of the great insights that happened in this development, right? And there's a couple of people that have been trying to play in the space that have done this in a weird way, but they've taken the context as the primary activity and forgot about the rest of the process, which is frustrating, right? But it's natural, right? Because the entire software industry says get a very narrow focus and just build a point solution. Like that's all any.
Because that's where the money is. Because then they'll flip it, and yeah,
exactly. But for us, right, the basic. So I got recommended this great book by my buddy Rich, who helped us design out this architectural system. He's now he was the head of product at WSL, and now he's like the head of live sports at Amazon. He's awesome. He's awesome, by the way. I like grew up with him, and he's just one of the nicest dudes you'll ever meet. Very, very smart. And he's an art school kid too that went into tech. So he's rad, right? But to his point, he gave me this book called Designing Connected Content, which is a great book on just like how we sort content, how we sort context, what is content, right? And how to break it down. But one of the fundamentals is basically a first principle, break it down into its most basic, right? Into its smallest kernel. And so when we were developing this out, right, we basically said, okay, well, right now, the way that native applications are built is they rely on API calls effectively to constantly switch information back and forth, versus creating an object at the center of the whole ecosystem, right? And then letting the native applications pull that object, right? So in effect, in outcome, what that means is you can type an object in a document, right? And that type, that paragraph, whatever that group has effectively contained metadata. And then you can push that piece of text, that image, whatever, to any other file, to any other application. So it can go from a document to a whiteboard, to a chat, to a task manager. And in essence, it's the same object. And so what you do is you track the context behind it. And that's just the metadata. So you say, okay, this tagline or this piece of Instagram, this method or this Instagram image or video that you pulled into your system, right? It exists, let's say it's in your project management tool. Well, then you push it to an instance of it, a mirror of it, to any other application, and you know that it exists in your project management tool with these statuses. It exists in this document and this train. It exists in context relative to this broader idea. And so you never learn, you never forget it. But the beauty is, and where we're trying to differentiate, where we are differentiating, is that not only do you retain context, but you retain the freedom that you would, let's say, with just a really good knife in the kitchen, because you have the ability to just put it into a document and draw that out and create and ideate exactly how you would. And you can push that and then be like, oh, I need this to be abstract. I'm going to put this into a whiteboard model and I'm going to draw around it. I'm going to design around it. And that same block can exist simultaneously in both. Right?
That's nuts.
It is nuts, but it's also in its manifestation, it's very simple. Because all it says is, okay, Huy Pham, I have this idea, I want to draw it out. Well, if you're in a nonlinear mode and you need to break out into a whiteboard and you want to pull context in, be it research, be it data, be it just a broad diagram. Well, as soon as you want to break out, you talk about context switching, as soon as you want to break out into any other form, you have to switch. You have to copy and paste right now. And that automatically takes its burden.
Yep.
And if you can take that away and you can just say, oh, this is great, I just want to start a quick document that's nested in it. And you create that, what it does is, how I'm trying to formulate this, because it's relatively novel, is, you know, we're breaking the old adage of the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And we're saying actually the shortest distance between 2 points is to take away the line altogether and make the 2 points the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
that's effectively what we're saying, because your team, you get into cross collaborative functions, and I'm making some jumps here, but you and I have been in the same room working on the same project.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have relatively similar ways of thinking, but we also can be disparate. Now, you and I have also worked with accountants, people that are so linear that you laugh. You are very good at this. You laugh. You're like, okay, this dude's wild. He's just so formulaic. But regardless, you have to work together. That doesn't matter. Like again, this is to the friends' myopathy of wanting the outcome before they work through the process. Is we naturally have a tendency to say, if you don't think like me, then you're wrong, or then you need your own system. Well, in fact, the solution is make the linear and the nonlinear thinkers work on the same object in the same place and create that opportunity. So for spreadsheets, right? Create the system that has the spreadsheet, that object, cells within the sheet can exist within the abstract whiteboard model or the canvas model just as easily. And when we do that, then we've eliminated the need for context switching in general.
Yeah, to where you can pull context to where because like what the problem with thinking is context switching. The problem with deep focus is context switching. The problem with getting anything done really is context switching. It's the priorities. The priority becomes the priorities, and your brain starts getting stressed out.
And this is the great paradox of productivity, right? Is that as you impart more tools, features, steps, and processes into a productivity system, the less productive it gets.
Yes.
The more specific you do, right? This is our great like quippy tagline. Busy doesn't equal productive.
No.
Features does not equal powerful, right?
No.
Yet again, to the venture capital world, they invest, like if you read a lot of the majority, I mean, I think David Sachs was quoted on why he invested in like ClickUp, which is just a disaster, right? And he's like, I loved that they released a new feature every week. And I was like, and what does that do? I mean, it has its applications, don't get me wrong, but what that does is it encourages a behavior to keep muddying the system.
Yes.
To keep inserting more and more. It's like middle management, right? What you're doing is you're creating a bigger administrative system in place of the input output, when in reality, efficiency, productivity is gained by reducing the number of go-betweens.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And then it's about just repeating.
And then it's about consistency, right? And what is it? Persistence and consistency, right?
Yes.
Is a great operational like breakdown. So for us, right? And this is our grand thing of the good craftsman doesn't blame his tools, right? Is you know, that old business school adage of don't dig for gold, build a shovel, right? I love that. And that's the same thing. It's like, well, the shovel is such a basic tool, right? It's such a basic thing, but it's so useful. The knife in the kitchen is the most valuable tool because you pretty much can't do anything without that, right?
Yeah.
And what we're trying to build, what our big innovation thing here is, and to get back to the point is like, listen, the knife, what we think of the knife right now, or have thought about it for the last 20 years, are these individual applications. And we think that we need 5 knives. When in reality, these knives need to be forged into one thing.
Yeah, which was what everybody was hoping for from Google Workspace.
Yeah, but it hasn't worked, right?
It's not that. It is.
And it's the same. It's the same thing with Microsoft. Now, we're doing the same thing, right? Where we've actually built the architecture out for like AI deployment, right? Just because of the shared object architecture, it's just more efficient innately. But but to the latter point, right, the benefits become also more intrinsic, right, and less measurable by pure productivity, because in a model that's built off to measure activity like widgets per hour and activity on platform, how do you demonstrate the value of busy doesn't equal productive, of true efficiency? Because it becomes, again, another paradox of like, if we actually create it so people work less but do more, they're going to think of it as a negative because people are working less, even if productivity goes up.
Which is trash. It's like, I literally read today, no, 2 days ago, I was reading a Reddit forum where engineers were literally writing scripts to perfectly demonstrate a burn down chart, even though they weren't doing it.
Yeah.
Because like logging, like they were writing scripts to like log time, because timesheets are freaking stupid. And they're like, dumb. Yeah, they're dumb. Like, just pay me for the outcome.
Yeah. No. Okay. So yeah, pay me for the outcome, right? This is also a difference in thinking. But one of the things that we're trying to lean into, and you remember from the early days talking about this employee lifetime value, right, as one of those great HR efficiencies. But the problem is all the metrics that we tend to want to put in there are, again, widgets per hour, right? But when in reality, and this is where we're just going to try to flip the script eventually, right? We have a lot to do in the meantime. Is do you have an Apple Watch?
No.
So I didn't forever, but then I had
one for 5 minutes and then I gave it away.
So one of the things that I love about the Apple Watch, and I wish this thing would, I don't know why it's not pulling up right. There we go. Is this thing.
What was that?
My activity tracker.
How fat you are?
Yeah, exactly. It guilts me.
Oh, you're fat.
I know.
You're
Dude,
fat.
But it's great because what it is, right, is it gives me movement, exercise, and standing. Those are the three metrics that it gives me a pretty little rainbow circle to monitor, right?
That's nice.
But what it does more that you would appreciate from a habit standpoint is it proactively prompts me and gives me gates to keep on my activity. So instead of saying reverse engineering productivity, of saying you need to do X amount per whatever and reviewing the process, what it does is say, you've walked for 20 minutes. You've burned this. You've recorded this many hours. Good job. Here's your reward.
Positive reinforcement.
So this is what we're going to build in, right? Is instead of the negative tracker widget on a timesheet, build in the proactive and honestly proactive focus meter, right? That you can change on your gates. This is
Apple's thinking like this. All of their OS updates have been about positive reinforcement around using their devices.
Yep. And
super smart.
No, and that's exactly what we're going to do is say, like, yeah, you could do this and you can timesheet your shit. Good luck. Right. Or we can create something that's like, okay, well, at the core of our thing, right, is we have these multiple applications built around it, which would be a document, a whiteboard, a chat, task manager, spreadsheets, right? And we'll all united. And we can say very roughly, when you're chatting, you're not really working, right? You're conversing, you're collaborating in a way, right? If you're inside of any application and there's multiple people in there working, then you're in a collaborative environment, right? These are broad strokes. And then we can look at, okay, are you in there really working and inputting and just focused on this thing with relative activity, right? Focus. And we can say, okay, so you have focus, you have collaboration, and then you have, a broader, call it distraction mode, right? Of chatting and whatever, DMing. And then we can create the same effective circle and say, what do you want your gates to be? Do you want 15 minutes of focus every day? Do you want an hour of focus? And then just create something. You've only done 15 minutes of focus today. And just give them a little positive reward cycle that says, oh, great, you did an hour. Perfect. An hour of focused work is on average what the modern knowledge worker gets every day.
Yeah.
They don't get more than that, right?
Yeah.
We can do the same, and then we can input time in meetings, right? And do the same thing. It's like, oh, you were, so on and so forth, but make it positive and reinforce.
Yeah, because that's the natural thing that's happening is negative reinforcement.
it's reductive, right? And that's how we tend to measure everything, is reductive measurements of, did you do X amount in X amount of time, versus, hey, try to increase the positive reinforcement of your time. So this little guilty pleasure here is like, fuck, man, I didn't burn my 850 calories today, right? And like, listen, I think the whole body positivity thing is a little bit of a wonky subject.
I'm
But
gonna interrupt you. I got 1 minute.
Okay, give me your tagline.
All ideas are good ideas.
No such thing.
When
as
you don't have
idea.
an idea, it's a bad idea. But if you have an idea, it's a good idea.
I love that. All right, bro. I love you. So good to see you. Let's do this more. I've already thought about it. Jess said that she missed you and BB and the kids a lot. And no, seriously, we were on our walk. I was telling her that I was meeting with you and talking with you, and she's like, they have 3 wonderful kids. I love them. So,
well, tell her we send our love and we love her too, and can't wait to she introduces you to Jesus. All right, bye.
Bye, bud.